Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Okay, so I went down the rabbit hole of watching all the stitches to this video. And I have come to realize that growing up the way that I did created an issue in me that I didn't even realize it. I guess I just didn't realize it. But I'm literally always at the store. Like, no exaggeration. The lady at the Walmart down the street, she knows me. She knows when I dye my hair. She knows when I cut my hair. She knows my kids. She literally knows me because I'm always in the store. Growing up so damn poor, my mom worked at a restaurant and she worked like nights. She would come home like 2 o'clock in the morning. And there would be times that she would bring home like this big trash bag full of like fried chicken. And as kids, we didn't know, you know what I'm saying? We didn't know. I remember that getting the food stamps, that was, we knew it was about to be on then. And because, we got the food stamps. As we got towards the end of the food stamps, which would sometimes come way too damn fast, way too fast, I already had a deal with the neighbor that lived upstairs, Miss Faye. I would borrow a pack of hot dogs from her until Mama get the food stamps. Like, oh Lord, but the fried chicken. There was a Hispanic guy that used to work with my mom in the kitchen doing the cooking. She was a waitress or whatever. He would literally over salt chicken sometimes, and they couldn't use it because they couldn't serve it at the restaurant. So he would say, oh, I have to throw this batch away. He would put it in a trash bag and put it by the trash can, but not in the trash can. And my mom would get it when she got off the board. When my stepdad would go to pick her up, my ex-stepdad, because he was a piece of shit. We should have never been living like that. Never should have been living like that. But she would literally bring her home, and those were like, I remember those being such happy days. We would be eating fried chicken for days. But we would smother it. We put gravy on it, make a fine, rice or whatever. We ate. I remember those moments so crystal clear. But now I'm always at the grocery store because I refuse to ever be without food in this house. Like, I'm never going to be without food in this house. My kids will never know what that feels like. Oh my God. I didn't even realize I didn't even realize I had this issue. Growing up not having food made me a food hoarder of sorts.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
I've never mentioned this before, but my birth mother, my biological mother, became addicted to drugs when I was about 10, 11 or something like that. I have such a mental block on that time frame. One of the first signs that your parent has become addicted to something is all of a sudden there's no food in the cabinet. There's no food in the fridge. So myself and my other sister, we would either bring stuff home from school, like our lunch, so we can split it again amongst the three of us, because there was just three of us at the time. We would either ask the neighbors for food, or I would steal stuff from the store. We had to do what you gotta do. One day I went over to the neighbor's house, and the teenage daughter, Sandra, opened up the door. She had to have been maybe 18 or something at the time. Sandra looked at me, she said, you know what, let me see what you got at your house. Now while she's going through our fridge and our cabinets, I'm behind her in tears because I am so embarrassed and just mortified that this woman sees we have absolutely nothing. As Sandra closes the last cabinet, I am so prepared for her to embarrass me and shame me. Sandra turns around and looks at me. Girl, you don't see all this food in this fridge? What? Sandra taught me how to make egg and rice. Sandra taught me how to make fried onions. She also pointed at a couple other little dishes I could make with what we had in the fridge. Because Sandra did not pity me, because she did not feel sorry for me, because she did not make fun of me, but instead she empowered me to take control of that moment, me and my sisters never went hungry again. She taught me how to survive. She taught me how to look in between the lines. She taught me how to push through. She gave me a strength at that moment that I carry to this day. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Mine is so Gen X. Sometime in the 1980s, Reagan decided that poor people shouldn't have even food stamps, and so he started giving us blocks of cheese and big vats of peanut butter and like big jars of mayonnaise. I think because poor people couldn't be trusted. As a kid, we would have this big block of cheese that was really crumbly that we called Reagan cheese. They didn't hand out bread. So we used to do this thing when microwaves came out, which was exciting. Take this crumbly Reagan cheese and put it on a plate and then melt it onto the plate and then just smush mayonnaise and mustard onto it and then let it harden. We called it Reagan cheese sandwiches with no bread. We also used to just eat spoonfuls of peanut butter from the big can. And dessert would be we would take Karo syrup. This is like maybe a southern thing. They would take butter or peanut butter and Karo syrup and just swoosh it around on a plastic plate and then just eat it. Karo syrup's like less than $1.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Plain white rice, but it was always overcooked because we were children and nobody told us how to cook and nobody was like watching us, and we didn't have electricity. We had like a gas stove, and so like there was no way to look up like how do you make rice, you know, what time is it. So it was usually like a boiled wet mess, or we would get candy bars from Dollar General, and I always told my siblings like we were paying for it so they didn't feel bad.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
My family had two go-tos. One of them was, of course, we grew up in the country and we were desperately poor. So my mom during deer season would always can all of our extra deer meat, and we always had jars of deer meat. And she would buy the egg noodles from the store when they went on sale for like 50 cents or whatever. And we would have deer noodles, which was literally just canned deer meat with a bag of egg noodles. And I had that a lot. Like, it's now a comfort food. Another thing that we did a lot, this is actually my fondest memory as a child. One of them was some mornings I would wake up and it was so desperately cold, and my mom would bring in my clothes warm off the wood stove and put them under the blankets with me and let me get dressed under the blankets. And then she would come in with a bowl with homemade vanilla pudding over a piece of toast. And I remember it being so warm and sweet and delicious. And when I brought this up to her as an adult, I found out that those mornings that were such fond memories for me were because overnight the wood stove had gone out and she woke up with frost on the blankets, and she remembered being so desperately cold as a child, and she never wanted us to know that. And so she would wake up before us and get the wood fire burning, put our school clothes on top of the wood fire, or the wood stove, and make the pudding recipe on the back of the cornstarch box, and give it to us over a piece of bread. And I think it's a mark of bravery that my mother managed to never make us afraid.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Pickle relish sandwich, if we had bread. Potatoes, just however which way we could cook them. Powdered milk. And potato chips for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because we had a neighbor who delivered for potato chip company, and he would leave the extras on our porch, and we would get really excited because then we'd have food for a couple days. Expired yogurt that we would get out of a grocery store dumpster, and a lot of pasta and butter and rice and butter. And something that I seem to be the only one that enjoyed is we would often get cans of cranberry sauce in those food donation boxes from churches, and I would put it in the freezer and let it harden, and then I would scoop it, like shave it away and pretend it was ice cream. So if you're thinking of donating to a food drive this season, don't just empty out your cupboards, but give them something you would want to eat too.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house. We always made
I was a latchkey kid, so I cooked for myself all the time. My mother worked 2 jobs. She was a bus driver and a limousine driver, and she was a single mother, making roughly 17 to 20 grand per year back in 1985. Jiffy cornbread was the little blue box. Must have been 10 cents. I'm not sure, but we had 1 box of that. And it was in the fridge for some reason, but I remember it was the only thing on the shelf. It was just another normal day of being home as the bus driver's daughter all by myself. And I was starving, and I didn't know what to do, and there was nothing else to eat that was already made, so I had to learn how to cook that, and that's what I made when I was roughly 10 years old. The other favorite was butter and saltine crackers. That was like a whole meal in itself. And if you were feeling rich, you got a grilled cheese sandwich with tomato soup. That was pristine.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house. We always made...
Oh, I could tell you all kinds of tales about this, honey. Growing up poor, East Kentucky, you eat what you had to eat. There was many meals where we just ate biscuits made with water instead of milk, and water gravy. You can do that. You can make gravy with water if you got some fat. And I remember one time just sitting, I don't know what made me think of it, but I was just dying for something sweet, but I actually peeled a potato. I guess we had a potato at that time, and somehow we had some leftover Hershey syrup from something or other, and I ate that chocolate syrup on that potato, and it's good. But in all honesty, I would go back to those days in a heartbeat compared to nowadays. I was happy.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Some things stick with you for life, and it's just the type of trauma that you'll never heal from, no matter how much counseling you try to go through or anything like that, because there is no explanation for why things happen or why people do the things they do. And that moment for me was when I finally had to break down after days of not having a single bite of any type of food. The only thing we had was water out of the tap, and I had to walk my weak little 8-year-old body over to my neighbor's house. She babysat me sometimes, so I knew her, and I had to beg her for food. She fed me a can of SpaghettiOs, and I don't think she really knew how to make SpaghettiOs because she put a can of water in it, and it was disgusting. But I ate it anyway, and it was the best meal I had had, because I was seriously feeling like I wasn't going to make it much longer if I didn't get some food soon. She was an angel in my life. She made me not feel so bad. I felt terrible asking for food, and she told me it wasn't my fault, and I shouldn't feel responsible or feel bad for asking her, and don't ever miss more than a couple meals before coming over there. She told me she always had food for me. So I will never forget that lady, but I also will never forget that the person who gave me life decided I wasn't a priority enough to keep me alive. I think that parent was on a bender and didn't come home for days and didn't care that there wasn't a speck of food in the house. Nothing. I don't know. I just really don't understand how some people can have kids and keep them and not give them away to someone who could take care of them. Keep them and then not do the very basic things to keep them alive. Forget love and compassion and nurturing and all that stuff. Food's a pretty basic necessity, and I can't think of a worse way to treat your child than to starve them to death and just not care. So I won't forget that, and that's not one of those memories that just gets triggered by a photograph or someone else talking about it. That's my memory, that moment of standing on that porch, knocking on that door, feeling like the lowest being on this planet because I wasn't worthy of food. That's horrible, and that feeling haunts me to this day.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
So I was gonna do this, but because of, well, just because. So when I was a kid, I lived in a motel with my mom. She was a heavy drug user, and she would disappear for weeks at a time. Literally just disappear. I was a kid, mind you, not even in my teens, I was a kid. So I would try to eat at friends' house from school. I would spend the night as much as I could until their parents started asking questions. And when their parents started asking questions, I would disappear. So when I would disappear, I would go back to the motel, and of course nobody's been there, and it's a motel, so you can only imagine I literally ate saltine crackers, and if there was some cheese there or something, peanut butter, I would roll it up in a ball and nibble on it like a mouse and try to keep it as long as I could and eat on that until I was able to either go to school or to a friend's house that I can eat until their parents started asking questions again. And then school was rough because, you know, when you go through things like that, you know, there was a teacher there that, you know, she would let me come in, she would pick me up before school, and I would wash my clothes in the home ec room. I would take a shower in the gym, and she would get me ready for the day. And it was, you know, it was life. I mean, I think a lot more of us go through stuff like this than we realize. And the only reason why I'm doing this video is because of the stitches that I watched. At first I was really hard-bodied about it, like, get over it, like, it's our past, like, we've all been through stuff like this. And I think it's a defense mechanism, the reason why I'm like that, because that's just not how it is. There was one lady who said that she actually has, I don't know what you would call it, but it's a problem from how she was raised to where she's always at the store. And that's why I'm doing this stitch, because I literally started thinking about it like, I'm always at the store. Like, I'm always constantly, I don't care if I buy something out of the clearance aisle for 25 cents. I am always, as soon as money hits my pocket, I'm going to the store. Nothing makes me feel more satisfied than going to the store and buying literally everything that we need for the house. Paper goods, food, just odd end stuff, like anything. Constantly. I am constantly at the store. And then when she said that, it really triggered me because, yes, as a child, I ate saltine crackers. There was no food. There was no stove, no refrigerator, no nothing. We lived in a motel.
Stitch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house. We always made pocket bread, which was just flour and water. We also ate mustard sandwiches if we had bread. Stitch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
I guess today is Food Trauma Day. The government used to give you food stamps so you could go and buy things, but they also gave you a box of food. And it was like cornflakes, powdered milk, a Chef Boyardee pizza kit, a big block of cheese, butter, a big block of butter, some lard, bag of flour. There were like, I think some canned vegetables and stuff, but they'd give you this box of food. This was supposed to like last you through the month, you know? And towards the middle of the month, we would run out of food. And so we would have cheese and coffee. And that was instant coffee that they gave you, and some of that government cheese melted in the coffee, and then you would like scoop it out and wipe it on some white bread. And cheese and coffee was breakfast before school.
Stitch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
So this is a weird response, but medication. For context, I was 17, and by this time I'd been orphaned by my mother at 15 and was emancipated and living in an assisted residential program, while balancing work and school, and it was destroying me. I suffered severe depression with bipolar, and had a social worker arrange for me to meet with a psychiatrist to help. He was an older guy who was clearly used to inner city kids, and while he was nice, it kinda helped that nothing I said ever seemed to bother him. I'd spent the last couple years hovering between housed and homeless, and often struggled to keep bills paid and eating regular, even with the help of state welfare and food pantries. I'd been put on a new medication about 6 months before called Neurontin, and it had taken the edge off of my depression, but it had a number of side effects I couldn't afford. So, realizing that I needed to do something about it, I'd done my research and taken notes and confronted my psychologist to ask for a medication change. I sat in his dingy office and explained that I needed to switch my antidepressants from Neurontin to Wellbutrin. He asked if the Neurontin had stopped working, and I was honest. No, it worked just fine, and it was making me gain weight. He said I looked thin for a month, and maybe we stay on it for another month first. I looked down at my notes and explained I didn't mind gaining weight. The problem was that it was increasing my appetite, and I couldn't afford it. By contrast, Wellbutrin I'd taken once or twice in the past, and I knew that one of its effects was that it suppressed appetite. He didn't respond, and I was afraid to stop talking because I needed to switch those meds. So I stayed looking down, and I explained I can't find or afford more food, but if Wellbutrin could make me eat less, then I could stretch things out a bit better. And I flipped to a calendar I'd worked out where we might alternate depending on what my finances looked like to try and keep my weight healthy without hitting withdrawal and keep me medicated. I explained that the state wouldn't give me more food stamps, but they did cover the cost of my meds. So, I heard a sniff and looked up to discover he was silently crying. He told me he'd never been asked by a child to account for starvation in their psychiatric prescription. He didn't even know what the right answer to my request was. He realized he couldn't fix my food insecurity, and so I left that office with a new prescription for Wellbutrin. And that's on the American welfare system.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
Let me preface this by saying this is absolutely no shade to my mom now, because me and my mom are best friends. She's fucking great. She's clean. I love her. But at the time, when we were kids, she was struggling with a drug addiction. So we used to get food stamps under her name, and I think she got like $200 or $300 a month. And she was a stay-at-home mom, and my stepdad was the only one that was working, so he literally made enough to pay the bills. We relied on the food stamps to eat, and we were a family of 6. And during the school year, it was like fine because we would eat breakfast and lunch at school, and she would just have to worry about dinner. But in the summertime, like, it was hard. So there was a point where she got into her addiction where she would sell or trade our food stamps for her drugs. And so when I say that, I mean, like, I would ride with her to the dealer's house, and like we would pick up these people that the dealer knew, and we would take them grocery shopping at like midnight, and she would drop $100 or whatever of our food stamps for the month, you know, on these people. Yeah. So it got to a point like where she got really bad, and I know that my stepdad ended up applying under his name, and because he worked and his income was the way it was, he only got approved for like maybe like $100, and that can't feed 4 kids, especially like, you know, in between like school breaks and like summertime and shit. So we would go to, you know, food drives, not food drives, but like the Salvation Army and shit. We would go to churches and have to get like donated like canned products and food. So there was a point in time where we were so fucking broke, and my mom would be MIA for a few days, come back, and would be just, you know, recovering from her bender, and all we had in the cabinets was cornbread. And since I was like 8 years old, it was my responsibility to make dinner, because I would be watching my sisters and my dad be at work, and I would just have to feed them, clothe them, you know, make sure everything's good before they go to bed, and I would also get them up for school. Like, I was the mom. There was plenty of times, besides ramen, that dinner was literally cornbread, and I would try to find different ways to make the cornbread, you know, be at least appealing to, you know, these are kids that are like in elementary school. They're 3 years and on younger than me, and then one of them was like a baby. So I would deadass like take cornbread and throw some cinnamon in it, like some butter, and make it like taste good, and I would just fill up my sister's own cornbread, or just rice and soy sauce. And now one of my big love languages is food. I cook for people, and I make a lot of food, and I share it with my friends, my family. But I mean, we always ate. It just wasn't on.
Ditch this and tell me something you ate as a kid because you didn't have any other food in the house.
I've never in my life felt so privileged. And this is coming from someone who is Cameroonian. Most of y'all probably don't know where that's at. It's Africa, next to Nigeria. And some of y'all would consider my country a third world country. But even the kids in the village, they would get chop. They would get food. They had food to eat. When I came to this country, I used to see these videos of feed the African children. And after watching some of these stitches, When I begin to put that video, put America Pekin inside, I beg. These videos are sure enough led, especially for some of y'all white kids. Y'all was eating some stuff that would make some of us in this third world country feel sorry.
I thought this was a joke. I honestly thought someone was trolling me, but they're not. I had to go do my own research and I found the video. Brace yourself.
Sie hat nur wenig Zugang zu nahrhaften Lebensmitteln. Ihre schlechte Ernährung kann zu Diabetes, Herzkrankheiten und einer teuren Abhängigkeit vom Staat führen. 49 Millionen Amerikaner leiden unter Lebensmittelunsicherheit. Sie sind hungrig nach mehr als nach der nächsten Mahlzeit. Sie sind hungrig nach einem Wechsel. Amerika braucht unsere Hilfe. Jetzt.
I have no words. I have no fucking words. None. None.